In this video, I want to show you the top 10 pre-ride checklist items that you need to do before every ride. What's up, Rad family? I'm Dakota Freeman and welcome to the Rad Adventure Dude channel. If you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, make sure you hit that and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any of my future dirt bike riding tips. Before every ride, we need to go over these top 10 pre-ride checklist items to make sure our bike's safe before we get on it. Before every single ride, it's very important that we check our tire pressure to know that we have the proper tire pressure when we're riding. To check our tire pressure, we're going to use a little tire gauge, put this on our air nozzle, and that's going to tell us what tire pressure we're running. It's going to be a big personal preference on what you like to run. I like to run a 12-12, and that's just what I've always done, and I like to stick with it. So make sure you're using a tire tool to check your air pressure before every ride. The second part of this checklist is going to be to check your air filter before every ride. If your air filter is dirty, it's going to be very important that you clean it to make sure your dirt bike can breathe properly and have the most power possible. The third thing we want to go over is making sure that we have the proper chain tension so that we don't throw a chain when we're out riding on our dirt bikes. The proper chain tension can be measured by 2 fingers under the swing arm just to make sure that everything is tight enough to where it's not going to come off. However, it's not too tight to where it's going to break your chain when we're riding. Like I said before, we like to put 2 fingers under our chain on the swing arm, and that's just going to make sure you're at the proper spot. Fourth on our checklist, we want to make sure that the bike has gas in it before every single ride. So always check and make sure you have the proper amount of gas before going to ride. This is going to be an easy one, but make sure you do it before every ride. We also want to make sure that we have the proper oil level in our dirt bikes as well. The proper oil level can be found on a window on the side of your dirt bike. Every dirt bike's a little bit different, but look for a window, and that window is going to show you the proper level of oil that you need to have in your dirt bike. So make sure before every time you go riding that you have oil in your dirt bike and it's at the proper level. The sixth thing that we want to cover is to make sure that you have the proper amount of radiator fluid to keep your bike cool. You can check the radiator fluid by popping the top off of the radiator cap here. Just make sure that you have not been on your bike and that it is very cold before doing so, or else this will spew. So always before a ride, make sure that you check this. However, if you've recently been on your dirt bike, do not open your radiator cap. The seventh thing that we want to cover on our checklist here is going to be to make sure that you have the proper amount of brake fluid and clutch fluid in your dirt bike. On my dirt bike, it has a window on my brake fluid here, and this shows me so I can see that it has plenty of fluid in it and I don't have to worry about it. Also, you want to double check your clutch fluid just to make sure that all your fluids are full and that everything works properly when you're riding. Another thing that goes out frequently on our dirt bikes is going to be our fork seals. So I like to, before every ride, just check around my fork seal and make sure that I have had no leaking or anything like that, or else I would try to replace that fork seal before the ride. I live in the mountains in Colorado, and it is so often that I walk out to my dirt bike and my fork seals have been blown out. The trails I ride on are very rough, and this is something that happens to track riders and trail riders. So make sure you check your fork seal if you want the smoothest ride possible. The ninth item on this checklist is going to be to make sure that your spokes are tight before every ride. You can knock your spokes and listen to the dinging sound to know if it's tight or loose. However, you can also just feel it, and if it has a little wiggle to it, you're definitely going to want to tighten it up. You really want to make sure that your spokes are all tightened properly and that your wheel is not out of true. So by doing this, you're going to want to go through a step and a procedure to actually tighten up all of the spokes correctly instead of just tightening one that is loose. However, if it's still loose and you can twist it with your fingers, I would suggest tightening it with your fingers until you can't before you go through the proper spoke tightening checklist and make sure that all your spokes are tight. And the last thing that I do before every single ride is I pull out my handy dandy T-handle and I check all the side engine bolts. I'll go over all the bolts on my handlebars, on my axles, on everything that I just want to make sure that everything's as tight as it should be. Dirt bikes vibrate and rattle a lot, and this can cause bolts to come loose while we're riding. So this is why it's important to bring out your tools and just make sure that everything's properly tightened so that it doesn't come loose when we're riding. We want to make sure that we never over tighten bolts on our dirt bike because this is an easy way to strip out bolts, break bolts, and that's not what we're trying to do here. We simply just want to take our T-handle and make sure that it's on the point where it has the least amount of leverage. That way you can just simply hand tighten everything and make sure that it's properly tightened. You don't want to use one of these and really try to force a bolt tight, as that's not going to help, and that could strip out your dirt bike bolts, making it to where you can't get the bolt off, get another bolt in, and we really want to make sure that we're never forcing it. So make sure that you're always putting your bolts in properly, especially when you're first starting them, as it's going to continue in that path throughout the entire time the bolt's going in. And make sure that you're not over tightening them, as this is an easy way to strip your bolts, break bolts, and that's not what we're trying to do. So this is my top 10 pre-ride checklist, and I really hope this helps you know what to go over on your dirt bike before every ride. If this video helped you, make sure you like this video, drop some comments down below, and ask me any other questions that you have. If you're still looking for more riding tips, I'm always here. I've made a full dirt bike riding course over on my website that's going to walk you through being a complete beginner and take you to an advanced rider mastering the tracks and trails. I also give away a free dirt bike guide over on my website. Just subscribe to my newsletter and I'll send it straight to you. Make sure you click the subscribe button that's right here and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any of my future dirt bike riding tips. After that, you can watch my next video right here. Stay rad, and I'll see you over there.